Bhrāmarī Prāṇāyāma is a breathing technique that is well loved. I love it. And it's a really beautiful technique because it's the humming breath or the bee breath. Bhrāmarī is a really lovely technique that helps us to use the vocal and audio vibration to create a stimulating but down-regulating, soothing response for your nervous system. And it's a really beautiful way to create that sacredness that builds the baseline of your Om, or that vibration that allows us to feel a sense of the consciousness within us. Oftentimes when we do Bhrāmarī or the humming breath with the bee breath, it's as simple as the way in which you would hum, but it's with more intention. From a Western perspective or a modern perspective, humming is humming. But to hum with intentionality, to hum with a sense of allowing the energy to be vibrated, to create a currency, to create a current through the nadis, is to do it in a way where it's almost allowing the sound and the vibration to be that which sparks the connection to the sacredness. Now, depending on the octave of your voice, the sound of your hum could be And what's most helpful for the way in which it impacts the nervous system is a low frequency hum. So I don't want to say the lower the better. We don't want to try to go as low as possible. But the idea that the hum is low, soft, and steady is typically the approach that I would take, and the best way that it can support the physiology of the body and the breath. So Bhrāmarī is that technique, the humming breath. But where we tend to start looking at it with a little bit more depth is understanding that with this technique, you have ways in which you can support it to be even more valuable, more inwardness, more vibrational. And there's two different mudras that we would use using the hands to help create an enclosure or bring the awareness of outward sensations inward. So the first mudra is probably the simpler one, which is the way in which you would use your index fingers or thumbs to create a seal of the tragus, so the ear flap here that covers the whole of your ear canal. When you do that, you can try this now. If you press your fingers into your ear and hum, it reverberates a little bit more through your head, making you feel like it's louder and more encompassing. Making it feel like it's louder and more encompassing. That in its own right, by bringing the awareness and the sensation inward, gives you more sense of focus, more sense of here and now, and allows this practice to be felt far more than without the mudra or the plugging of the ears. So try this now. Let's just try this once or twice. Breathe in, plug your ears. Breathe in again, plug your ears. How does that feel? It feels quite nice, right? However, the issue that you might face, which you potentially just faced right now, is that if you are plugging your ears or a student is plugging their ears, they can't hear the teacher. So in many ways, you need to make sure you set them up for success by saying, you know what, do 3 on your own and then bring your hands back to your lap. Or plug your ears when you hum, but slightly release them so you can hear when you inhale. So part of that is just how you manage the moment to ensure that everyone can be in the practice and not lost within within the mudras of the practice. So that's one great way to practice it, and that's probably the way I would normally practice it, my go-to way in which I would practice Bhrāmarī, fingers and ears. But the second way, which is a mudra called Shanmukti Mudra, is about closing off all the sensory input in a way where we're using the fingers and of the hands to really seal in all the ways in which sound or light or smell come into the body. And so you're going to start in the same way as you did by plugging the ears, but you're going to use the thumbs. So I'm going to plug the ears with the thumbs. Then I'm going to use my index and my middle fingers as one, and I'm going to use them to seal the eyes. That's going to block light from coming in, or in turn allowing energy to escape or move out of the body through the eyes or the gap between the eyelids. So you'd have the thumbs and you'd have the eyes. Then what you'd have is you'd have pinky fingers, or ring fingers and pinky fingers left. Your ring fingers will do exactly what they would do in something like Nadi Shodhana, alternate nostril breath, where they're going to seal the nasal cavity or seal the nasal channel. Now, I'm not going to seal here at the bottom. I'm going to seal here where I'm pressing them in to seal off the passage in which the air flows out before it kind of spreads out into the nasal cavity or into the nasal cavity holes, whatever they're called. And so you'll see thumbs, fingers, ring finger. And that does most of the work to cover and seal. So then you say, okay, well, where do the pinkies go? Well, the pinkies go on the corners of the mouth. And when they go in the corners of the mouth, it's often talked about that even with your mouth closed, air, energy, life force can slightly escape from the corners of your mouth. So you plug the corners of your mouth with your fingers to ensure now nothing escapes. Give that a try. Go ahead. Thumbs, index and middle finger, ring fingers, pinky. Take a big breath in. Exhale. How'd that go? Now, there is a potential misfire that's happening where you're going, how does the air come out? Which is a really important point, because if you seal here and seal there and seal there and seal there, you actually can't exhale because you've sealed all the exits. So it's really important to remember that this practice and these practices are first and foremost energetic practices. They are practices of energy management. And the byproduct of that is that it's not necessarily focused on breath management. Breath is secondary. So breath is physical, it's functional, where energy is subtle, it's existential, it's part of the conscious. And so in order to functionally breathe while still retaining the energy, you want to take some of the pressure out of the ring finger so that the air can still exit through the nose. So think about it, if you were thinking of your nose or your nasal passages like straws, you're going to squeeze them in enough where they have this compression, but there's enough hole that you can still blow through it. So that's the way you want to exhale still using this mudra. So let's try this together. You're going to breathe in, you're going to engage the mudra, and you're going to hum as you exhale, and the air will come out of your nose. Okay, get set up, but don't seal yet, just so you have everything in place. All right, take a big breath in. Seal the ears, the eyes, the nose, the mouth, and breathe out. And then release your hands. How did that feel? How did you find that? That's really how you start to work with and utilize Shanmuti Mudra in your Bhrāmarī practice. But remember, at the essence of it, at the root of it, Bhrāmarī practice is a humming practice. The bumblebee breath, that rolling, vibrational, audible, soothing sound that comes when you practice Bhrāmarī breath. And that's the benefit of Bhrāmarī breath, that soothing, calming, vibrational sound that really puts us in a state of ease and a state of relaxation, and we use it as a tool as part of our pranayama practice.